Some of the very best games that have ever been released are multiplayer focused. I do truly believe the fact that sometimes those grand adventures that you can go on with your friends, beating a mission on the highest difficulty, or calling out for your friends to help you out when you're battling a very big boss, those are very special and unique memories. And it's this idea that's at the center of Warhammer Darktide. This is a co-op game that has you going against literally thousands of different kinds of monsters, gooey zombie-like dudes, exploders, all through weird, dark gauntlets. It's a cool game, but I do think it could be a bit better. Let's talk about the good, the bad, and the very ugly in my review of Warhammer Darktide. What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here. Hi, hope you're having a great day. If you could like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, I do want to be incredibly clear. Technically, they're counting this as a beta, but this is the full game. You're able to play missions, you can rank up, your progression is carrying over to the full release here next week. I mean, this is the full game. You can play the classes, you can customize stuff. I mean, this is it. They are going to be unlocking a couple additional missions and stuff, but I wanted to talk about it because even in this first week, I've already played nearly 30 hours of Darktide, and in that time, I have some very detailed thoughts, because this game is fun, it is dark, it's creepy, but it also feels a tiny bit limited. Let's start things off by talking about what Darktide is. In Darktide, we play as a bunch of soldiers for the Emperor. Now, the Emperor in this universe is like a god king. People worship him. I mean, straight up, these people are just weirdo cultists of their own sort of variety. But this is actually very, very cool because at the start of the game, you make your own custom character. You get a chance to mess with your eye spacing, your skin color. The background details that you select for your character can actually affect the lines of dialogue that your character will say, especially during some of these missions, which I find to be pretty dang cool. But what is it we're really going to be doing? As I'm sure you've already noticed, 99% of this game is just battling off waves and waves and waves of thousands of tiny dudes mixed in with some bigger special infected. This game does feel a lot like Left 4 Dead in that it's cooperative, you're focused on a particular mission that you're trying to accomplish, but along the way, the enemies are very randomized. Sometimes you're going to get more snipers, sometimes you'll get extra waves or big clusters of the little tiny minion dudes, but that's kind of what makes the replayability of this so dang addictive. While you're going through these, each different part of the city that the game takes place in, you have different objectives. The mission objectives themselves can be very wide-ranging, going from things like trying to restart a huge furnace or trying to hack an ancient computer, even doing things like raiding an ammo depot to try and just steal a bunch of bullets that will then strengthen the Imperium, or even killing a cultist's leader. But that does bring me to what are these guys specifically? So this is both good and bad, but inside the Warhammer universe, there's a lot of people that just go completely crazy. If you worship the gods of chaos, it physically warps your body. These people specifically are like followers of Nurgle, which means that they become like weird swamp monsters. They're kind of gooey, and that's cool. But I do kind of wish we got the other followers of the Chaos beings. Like, that's my biggest detriment, is that as much as I love this game, as much as obviously I replayed these missions again and again and again, and we're going to talk about progression systems in a second, I do kind of wish that we had more variety to the way that these monsters looked. I do think that when it comes to fighting, when it comes to firing a bunch of bullets into a crowd or trying to knock a dangerous dog off of one of your teammates because he's getting his face ripped off, I kind of wish that the enemies themselves at least looked a tiny bit different, because honestly, they kind of blur together. But what is it you're going to be doing? How is it that this combat actually works? So the interesting thing in this game is that you have two weapons at once. You have your primary weapon and your secondary weapon, but technically your melee weapon is considered your primary. You start off with like a sharp shovel. Eventually you get some swords or bayonets, and then some people even get super stuff. Like my class specifically got this cool chainsaw that I could actually use to chop up even armored enemies. Using this melee weapon does some pretty good damage. It swipes and knocks people over. It chops them up at a relatively good speed, especially the weaker foes that you fight in the big bulk. But the extra part of this that's interesting is the armor. Whenever you're fighting at Darktide, you take damage incredibly quick. I mean, if these people get through your armor, they start to take you down to 0 health very, very, very quick. But while you're doing melee damage, while you're chopping people up, that melee actually refills your armor ratio, which means it's interesting that sometimes you'll try and shoot a couple targets, maybe take out a special infected who's doing the most to your teammates, hurting you the most, like a trapper that's ensnaring you or an exploder that's trying to knock you off the map. After you fire a couple bullets with your secondary weapon, you need to switch back to melee and keep chopping to keep yourself healthy. Now, an additional mechanic of this that's interesting is that whenever you are standing close to your teammates, this also passively recharges your shields. It makes you very encouraged to stay in a cluster even though your character types behave differently. So there's 4 main classes in this. There's the Zealot, the Psyker, the Marksman, which is called the Veteran, and the Ogryn, who's like the big cool tank. Now, I think it's interesting because everybody has wildly different play styles. The big ogre guy is able to charge. His special attack is just knocking people over like bowling pins, but also his melee is very, very strong. Whereas I played predominantly as the marksman who does more headshot damage, and the further I am from targets, the more damage I deal. So it makes it where staying next to my Ogryn partner, my very good tank, it's difficult to do, but that constantly regenerating health encourages me to at least attempt to do it. I think the balancing, the pacing of these fights, these missions, I think are incredibly cool. Honestly, just having a chance to try and play good, playing things, especially on the higher difficulty, does feel great. Now, that does bring me to the fact that you're probably going to die quite a bit as you sort of learn this pacing. Honestly, the first 5 or 6 missions I did when I first started trying to actually figure things out, I ran out of ammo a lot because you're really not supposed to shoot everything. I mean, it's possible to shoot quite a bit. If you're constantly scrounging for more bullets, which are laying around on the ground, you can definitely keep your clip pretty full. It's definitely intended that you melee quite a bit to keep yourself alive and honestly to keep your clip as full as possible. But if you do get hurt, your health bar turns purple if you get hurt too much or if you get downed. The only way to restore this is to find a med kit station. There's like these surgery stations you can visit. Now, for every 4 people in your party, only 3 people can actually get healed. This is a tiny thing, but it just, again, it reinforces that fun, interesting balance of risk versus reward. Firing your bullets, trying to count and time every single hit of your melee, and then even this, of trying to discuss with your teammates who deserves that big full heal. I like this game a lot, but I do wish we had a bit more of level design variety as well. Everything takes place in this one city, and a lot of it does unfortunately have the exact same aesthetic. A lot of it's just broken boards and chain link fences, hard steel pipes and industrial factories, which does look cool, but after 30 hours, I kind of wish that we had some sort of different environment, more lived in suburbs or grassy knolls or something that is going to make this look a little bit more broken up. When you fight the same enemies again and again and again with the same style of teammates again and again and again, and do the same objectives again and again and again. Eventually you wish at least that you had something, just a little splash of color to make the Darktide not feel so oppressively dark. But the final thing we need to talk about is the upgrade system. Surviving these missions does level you up, and it allows you to get a bunch of additional skill tree talent points. There's basically these different breakdowns. Every 5 levels, you get a new passive. Things that'll make it where you automatically get healed if you get a headshot. Like for my particular character, I've got a thing where if I reload and there's still bullets in the clip, I reload faster, which as a guy who is a habitual reloader, this made me a lot more of a dangerous person. A lot of these skills are very strong. They're pretty dang cool, and they increase your ability to fight back on the harder difficulties, because some of these missions by default end up just being pretty tough. There's even this weird thing where there's like remixes. Since the missions themselves are randomized, sometimes there's additional like bonus mutators that say like, oh, you're going to be getting double the amount of normal enemies, or hey, there's going to be way more special infected trying to eat you up. It's cool that these games do have that thing where you have the risk versus reward once again. More difficulty, more money, more experience points means even more passive bonuses to grab. And then between these missions, you can spend that cash to buy actual upgrades, more equipment, more guns, more special passive bonuses that you can equip as well. I think a lot of this game's grind does feel good. It's just that lack of variety that to me does cause some detriments. Also, I've been playing this on PC. The game runs kind of terrible. There's stutters, the ray tracing randomly would shut off. The game hard crashed on me about 7 or 8 times in 30 hours, which feels like quite a bit when like literally every 90 minutes or so, the game would just shut itself off. But the game is fun. The game is objectively fun, but of course it's going to be better with your friends. Okay, so we've heard some good and some bad. Let's go over to the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Warhammer Darktide an 8 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, gamers. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. This game is coming to Xbox Game Pass for PC. I think it's coming to Xbox Game Pass for consoles. I'm honestly not sure when this is coming to console. I played a lot of this with an Xbox controller just to test it out. A lot of stuff I also played with the keyboard and mouse. Obviously, it plays better with the keyboard and mouse, but certain things like dropping medkits and stuff works a little bit better with that controller. Either way, you can't lose. Get it on Game Pass. Have fun with it. Tell me what you think of it. And please do me the biggest favor of all. Keep dreaming. I'll be honest, I shotgunned an entire Red Bull right before I filmed this video and I kept burping. So I'm glad I have to edit out a lot of burps for this video. Oh, I can feel another one bubbling up. I love you guys. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.